Hello everyone. Hopefully you can see me. Can you hear me? Hopefully you guys want to see me. I've got a YouTube channel. I hope that you want to see me, but importantly, can you hear me? Let me know in the chat if you guys can hear me or not. Dual position. We've got a few people in the chat already. Loved it. We've got Mitchell with the hype. We've got Keanu, one of the biggest fans. He has lovely comments. So Keanu, it's great to see you here as well. And the Dual Position Podcast, guys, if you don't know who the Dual Position Podcast is, you're not doing SuperCoach correctly, that is for sure. It's formerly the SP Whisperer. He's teamed up with Brew. They've got amazing podcasts going on. Isaac, I can see that you can see in here. Fantastic. So yeah, some tech issues. I'm a bit of an idiot. Didn't press go live. You'd think that I would learn how to do that, but it's the first live stream, guys. You know, come on, give me a break. But we are here. 2022 NRL SuperCoach season has arrived. How good is it? So thanks for you guys to be in the chat. I can see 12 of you here. Yeah, just really excited. I think obviously it's just open today. Let me know in the chat as well who's made like 50 different drafts, or if you had early access to the team picker. I've actually haven't made too many drafts, so I haven't even looked at it that much. I thought we'd use today as a good opportunity to be able to kind of like, you know, build a team, go through new rules, any changes, etc. But yeah, awesome to see you guys in the chat here. Really happy to be starting off. Use the FPL. There you go, Mitchell. I've got a name behind the Twitter account. Lovely comments from you as well on Twitter. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. If you see these dogs in your front yard, just know I'm upstairs going on. Mate, Dual Position Podcast is riffing in the chat. But yeah, so good to see you guys. I think enough of the pleasantries in the intro. Let's get straight to it. You probably guys want to see the actual website. You know, let's pick a team. Let's go through some new changes for 2022. Let's get straight into it. So hopefully you guys can see that. So I've just put up on screen just the NRL SuperCoach 2022 website, completely cleared up the team. So there's, you know, different ways that we can tinker with that. You know, 25 spots. We've got 10 million salary cap. Also, let me know in the chat as well if you guys can see that clearly or not. Hopefully, I tried to keep everything on the same screen as well. I've also got up on screen. I've just created, literally like 10 minutes before I went live. I've created a new league. So the code's 805. Actually, sorry, I've misspelled that. I think it's 805804. Apologies. There should be a link though in the description of this live stream. So if you guys click on that, you can automatically join into the league. So if you want to join the league, definitely get into that. It's not a head-to-head league. It's just one of those kind of general classic open leagues. I may make a head-to-head league as well. I think last season I ran just an open league. Just gave shout-outs to the top 5 each week, just to kind of track how they were going. And I think one guy actually finished like top 200 or 100. He did really, really well. Much better than me. I didn't have a great 2021, mainly because of Tom Trbojevic. We've got to talk about Tom Trbojevic, surely. Absolute killer for me last season. He absolutely destroyed my rank. I was actually starting okay, and he absolutely killed it. So do we start with him? You'd think I would start with him, but I don't know. He's super expensive, isn't he? So I don't know if I am actually going to start with Turbo. But yeah, so let's get into it, guys. So I think what I'll first start off with, I'm sure many of you would have already jumped into the game. If you're here watching, you're probably keen about SuperCoach just as much as I am. You've probably already gone onto the website, but for anyone who hasn't yet, I thought the first thing we'll do is we'll just quickly run through any of the changes that were announced for 2022. There were a few changes I think that might be worthwhile actually talking about. And then what I'll probably get into for the rest of the stream is... Sorry, someone's just calling me. What we'll probably get into for the rest of the stream is just kind of go through, build a 25-man draft. Hopefully get you guys to have some input as well in the chat because, you know, I'm still doing some research as well. I don't know all the best cheapies, the guns. I try to offer as much advice as I can, but there's still going to be a few players that I don't really know about. So you guys can, you know, tell me if I'm putting in a pretty bad player in the chat, or if you think I'm picking up someone sneaky differential. So yeah, I'll have a bit of fun with it. We'll let the stream go for as long as it takes, basically. But yeah, let's have some fun with it. I didn't want to put out a video with a preseason draft. I thought it'd be fun to do it over a live stream if I got the tech working correctly. But yeah, seems like it's working fine. If you pick Turbo and it fails, that's on you. You should see that coming. Dual Position Podcast. If anyone doesn't play Fantasy Premier League, that's a slight dig at another YouTuber there who he provided harsh lessons for anyone who didn't captain a player who scored really well. So yeah, sly dig there. If I pick Turbo and it fails, surely picking Turbo can't fail, but he is so expensive. We'll definitely get is he the best fullback option to go for? Mitchell, no, you're not tripping. There should be a 6-digit code. My mistake. I misspelled that. I can't edit it at the moment, but I believe it's 805804. But there should be a link in the description of this live stream, which has got an auto join, so you don't even have to find the code. So let me know if that works or not. Dual position. He's thrown in all the FPL bands. Cancelo or Garrick? How about neither? We'll go for neither in this particular instance. So yeah, let's get into the rules, new changes that have happened for 2022. And obviously, if you guys have any questions about any players, drop them in the live chat, and we'll definitely get to them as much as we can. I could be here all evening. All right, so conveniently they put up what's new in 2022. And let me know if you guys can see that as well, just because on my end, there is a bit of a delay in terms of what I show you guys and what I can actually see myself. So do let me know as often as you can, just so I know that I'm not talking and you guys aren't seeing what I'm discussing. But yeah, so I thought the first thing I kind of wanted to mention about what's new is the trades. So last season we had 37 trades over 25 rounds. They've now bumped that up to 42. Now, there's probably a few reasons for that. I think the main one is probably just for COVID. If anyone has played Fantasy Premier League, they would know that there's been like bazillion game postponements, late outs, etc. And the Omicron variant is just ramping. And so that really means that it's really hard for like fantasy players. So I'm not surprised to see like a few extra trades. God knows we needed them last season. So hopefully getting the 5 extra, I still think it's valid to, save them as much as you can. But 42 trades over 25 rounds, it does help just a little bit. And I thought the trade boost function was quite an interesting inclusion that they've had as well. So obviously anyone who played last season will know that they had a 5 trade round. I think it was between rounds 15 and 16. So they've kind of replaced that. That's no longer exists. But instead what you have is you have 5 rounds in the season that you can do a trade boost. So in say a standard round where you normally get a max of 2 trades, you can use a trade boost and you can actually use 3 trades. And in the 2 buy rounds, which I believe is again rounds 13 and 17, you get 3 trades that you can normally use, but if you use a trade boost, you can actually use up to 4. So I think this is quite interesting actually. I think it's going to allow for some strategy because, think about it, at the start of the season, you don't really know who the best options are, the cheapies, etc. Whereas, if you've got a trade boost, in round 3, you can use a trade boost, use 3 trades to get in the 3 best cheapies, and that would help you then build your squad value. So I think it's going to be really useful at the beginning of the season. I can definitely see a lot of people using it at the beginning just to kind of set up their team, and then hopefully in the kind of few weeks up until Origin probably start conserving trades, and then obviously around the buy rounds they'd probably use a trade boost. And I think it's going to be an added benefit as well. I was a sucker for that last season. I tried to plan too much for the buys and it just kills you because you just kind of ignore good options who do play Origin, and they just completely outscored any of the buy round players. So I think having these trade boosts that lets you kind of think about the buys less and around Origin, I think is going to help out a little bit. So I do think it's going to help out with planning. So that's one thing I thought that was quite an interesting inclusion for this season. And obviously guys in the chat, if you guys are enjoying this and my current rambling, do give the stream a like and do subscribe as well. It really does help the channel out. Obviously I've set up a whole new channel for NRL, but I thought it'd be good to start afresh for the 2022 season. So I think those are the 2 main kind of changes or updates for the 2022 season in terms of rules. Now, one of the other ones that I saw, and so I've got an external screen over here, so if I'm not looking at the camera, I'm just looking at an external monitor. So one of the ones I think was that you can also do trades or reverse trades after lockout. So I think previously, after the initial lockout on Thursday evening, you couldn't do the reverse trade function anymore. I believe you can do that now, so long as the players haven't been locked or they haven't played yet. So that's something handy, just in case you've made an error in your trades. You can actually still do reverse trades after the initial lockout. So that's something useful as well. I think they're definitely trying to set up rules essentially to help out people and keep them engaged as much as possible, which is good to see, obviously, because I think COVID will obviously have its play. Injuries and suspensions are always rampant in NRL as well. And the final one was this trade assist function. So I think this is only if you've got SuperCoach Plus. It sounds like they're just going to do some kind of optimization tech where if they look at your team, they're going to pick who's the player who's got the least projected score. And they'll say within budget who you can afford, who's got the highest projected score. I kind of just see how that's going to work. So if you're a SuperCoach Plus member, you can see how that works. I do believe they're given SuperCoach Plus on trial. I can't remember for how long. It's normally the first couple of rounds that you can use that SuperCoach Plus feature before you actually have to pay for it. So I paid for it last season. It was fine. I found the best benefit was looking at actually at the trade-ins and trade-outs just to kind of help assess like market, just to kind of see which players are being brought in the most and which players are being brought out the most. and it also let you see the captaincy percentages. I think that's one thing they've actually added now for SuperCoach Plus as well, which is quite interesting. I think you can now actually see the vice captaincy percentage ownership, so that would give you a better idea of also like which players are going to be used on like a vice captain loophole. Obviously I've only used the loophole once and it stuffed me up last season. I used it on Cody Walker. I think if you remember, he scored 150 and I thought, oh brilliant, that's a fantastic VC loophole. And then Turbo gets like what, 230. I remember chatting to Dual Position over there. Not chatting, I was more venting and crying to him as well, saying this is the worst possible time that I've used my VC loophole. But I think those are the most pertinent kind of rule changes for 2022. They've got some other stuff about leagues. You can customize your league a little bit more. I don't necessarily play too many leagues. I'll just normally just run my own channel league, but that's about it. And that's right, sorry, I missed it. Player position update. So this is quite an interesting one. I think NRL Fantasy do this. So during the season now, they can actually update player positions. So I think it's round 6, round 12s, and round 18. They're going to change player positions based on what they're playing currently in the NRL season. So, for example, last season we had like Josh Schuster. He was listed at 5'8" only, but he was playing in the second row. And so under the new system, come round 6 or round 12, depending on when he was actually playing a consistent run of second row forward, he would then be changed to a 5'8" / second row forward. So that should help out things. And for any dual position players at the start of the season, they can't actually lose their dual position status, which is good. So I think it's a feature that they probably needed to add just to keep the game more current and kind of up to date as to what's actually happening in the NRL. So I quite like that one as well. If you nail a player who is whatever, he's a back row or he's a center wing, but he's playing in the back row and you get that dual flexibility, it can really help out your team moving forward. I think that's about it. I think that's the main kind of changes. So I don't actually play draft for anyone, but there might be some changes for draft. I think Josh in dual position does play draft, so he can help you out with that as well. Obviously, check out his channel. Him and Brew have been posting amazing content so far this preseason. I've definitely been finding them super, super useful to kind of just brush up on my own knowledge as well. So I'll just quickly actually just look at some questions on the chat just while I've got it open. So Braden, welcome. To'o or Garrick? That's an interesting one. I would, off the cuff, obviously I think they're both really expensive. We'll get into the prices and stuff later. I think To'o, just because he's more consistent. You know what you're going to get from him. Good base, good work rate, plays on the edge of that really attacking kind of Panther side. Garrick, obviously goal kicking, but I think it's really dependent on how Turbo plays, because we saw that when Turbo was on fire, he was just feeding the ball to Garrick and he was just getting a bazillion tries, goal kicking. I think To'o is just going to be a little bit more secure. So it'll be interesting to see. I actually don't even know the prices of them two. So it'll be interesting to see how much they differ in price. But yeah, my gut feel would be going for To'o if you're going to pay that much for a centre wing to start the season. Kirko, I think I'll be waiting for Cleary and Turbo to drop in price before jumping on. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think there was some talk apparently before the game actually launched that they were going to have a thing where the prices were going to change after 1 round instead of 3 rounds. Now, if that was the case, I think that would have made me less keen on going for Turbo and Cleary, because they probably would have really high break-evens to start the season. And so if you could avoid just like 2 rounds and they dropped massively in cash, you could obviously pick them up a lot cheaper. But the fact that it's still the kind of 3-round system, it doesn't help in that much sense. And if I had to pick one of the two, probably Cleary, just because Cleary is like by far the best halfback. But Turbo, there's some competition at fullback like Tedesco, Pappenhausen, even Gutherson, for example, that you can consider. Halfback, I don't think there's as much good options, so I think Cleary is a standout. But yeah, they're really expensive. So we'll definitely build a team where we have Cleary without Cleary with Turbo, see if we can fit a team with both of them. So we'll have a bit of fun with that as well. If you don't pick Harry Grant and Randall, I'm unsubscribing. We'll start off with the hookers dual position, but I have a good feeling they're probably going to be the two that I've got. I'm just as on board with Harry Grant as you are, mate. You absolutely love him. Coco, boost me up for buy rounds. Exactly. Actually, thank you. That's giving me a good content title idea for when we get to the buy rounds. Boost the buys. Thank you, Coco. I'll shout you out if I actually do end up using that come the buy rounds. Shah Hannah says, agreed with Kirko. I think Teddy and Pat can match Turbo in the first month. Yeah, I'm kind of on a similar line of thinking as well, I think. John T, what's the league code? There's only 5 numbers. Yep, yeah, sorry, it's been mentioned before. There was a bit of a typo on my end. I do believe it's 805804, but there should be a link in the description below, which has an auto join feature to just join straight into the league. So do check that link, see if that works out for you. If it doesn't, I'll post in the comments after. Apologies, I can't update that at the moment, but I do believe it's 805804. Actually, what I might do is I'll just pin that to the top of the chat, just so check description below. So I'll just pin that just so people, if they do join, they know where to look for that. Kiani, you've been waiting all year for this, mate. I'm so glad that you're here. You post lovely comments, so I'm really happy to see you here. All day. All year, all day. Same thing. We've all been waiting a long time. And Paul, how do you feel about McInnes? I think, you know what? I think we're talking about enough rules. I think let's get into the players now. I think there's a few questions coming in about players. So Hooker's where it's ended up with to start. I think Hooker, yeah, I'll go the Hookers first, and after that I'll let you guys in the chat tell me the next position, and we'll just work through like that. How about that? So yeah, starting off with Hooker, yeah, I think Chris Randall. So if anyone wasn't aware, so Jaden Brayley's had a pretty significant injury. I do believe it's an Achilles injury. So he's going to be out for like 6 months, and I think there was a report, I can't quite remember from where, but Chris Randall is probably going to be the starting number 9 for the Knights. And so I think he's like 240k. So he's probably going to be the best like hooker cheapie, I think, to go for. I did mention that as well in my hooker video. 245k. If he's nailed on, I don't. Someone actually let me know in the chat as well. Is he the same guy who made like 70 tackles in a game? There was a Knights hooker who made like 70 tackles like on his debut or something. If that's Randall, obviously it's a good example that he's got good base, good work rate, which is good for a cheapie. So hopefully he can make us some coin. And you can see there actually that's going to be interesting. So just looking at those hooker options, just sorting by ownership percentage, Chris Randall is number 1. 49% of the game currently own him in their team. So I think that gives you a good indication that I think most people are probably going to be selecting him as the kind of cheapie hooker, I think, to go for. Achilles 14 weeks or so. Yeah, there you go. So he's going to be out for quite a long time. There's plenty of time for Randall if he does get a consistent run of games to make some good coin. And I kind of mentioned this in my hooker video in terms of like, so you're going to go for a cheapie. I think Chris Randall's pretty obvious. And then whether or not you go for like a hooker gun, you know, like Grant, Reed Marnie, McInnes, or Damien Cook, or you go for kind of like a mid-ranger, like, you know, you've got like Coruscant, you got like Ruben Cotter as well. I kind of think because there's only 2 slots for hooker, I do think that it's best to go with a gun just to start off with. It's one of those positions where you don't have that much choice. I think it's best to just start off with a proven gun. It's other positions like second row forward, center wing, I think, where you can take more chances on like mid-rangers because you've just got more slots to play with. But hooker, I think you really have to go for the best, at least in one of the positions, in my opinion. And so, yeah, you can see that ownership. McInnes, interestingly, is the second highest. I think a lot of that is due to price. 535k for McInnes. So I'll just touch on Paul's question as well about how I feel about McInnes. Look, I think the biggest question mark is obviously how he's going to return from his injury, right? Because he had a pretty significant injury, and he's also playing in a new team. So he hasn't played a single minute yet for the Sharks. I do think they've got Finucane. I can't remember if they've got any other forwards, but just not quite sure of like the minute situation or like how good he's going to be upon return. The price is really, really appealing, but it does make me think that because he's well priced, you don't necessarily have to go with him from the beginning. You can kind of get to him a little bit easier if he does start well and he kind of looks good. And I do believe he probably, would he play? Please, guys, you can tell that I haven't done all my research. I'm not 100% sure if he's going to be playing the 9 position or the 13 at lock. I think if he plays at lock, his attacking stats might go up just a little bit. He will make some running meters as well, which helps. He doesn't really get as much of them playing in hooker, but he might not play the full 80 at lock. I think that's the difference with if he plays a hooker, potentially a good chance of playing extra minutes. So McInnes, I think, obviously we know he's amazing. I think it was in my hooker video. I don't know if I talked about it in my hooker video. I think I talked about him. I'm going to talk about him in my second row forward video, which I've got prepared already. Just need to record that sometime soon. His 2020 stats were amazing. His base was like 66, I think he was averaging. So we know that he's a proven gun. I'm just not sure back from an injury if I want to go there straight away. Like for me, look, I'm going to say Harry Grant. I think you can see 28%, so he's the third highest. 645k. I know he's going to be missing round 1. I do believe he's got a suspension. So not ideal, but if you've got a ready-made replacement in Chris Randall who can cover for round 1, I do think it's worth just starting with Grant from the beginning. Hopefully we can have a look at the Storm's draw as well. I do believe it's not too bad to start the season. So you can see upcoming opponents. Yeah, so he's going to miss that game against the Tigers, but then you got Rabbitohs, and then Penrith, and then it's not. Oh, there we go. We've got an extended view now. So you've got Tigers, Penrith, Parramatta, Bulldogs, Raiders, Sharks, Warriors, Knights, Dragon. Like, it's not really until round 10 that they're versus the Panthers. They don't really have that many tough. I mean, obviously the Eels did beat them, I think, last season, but I think he's just one of those guys you just get for the start of the season because the thing is, he is the most expensive one, right? if you don't start with him and he does really well, it's going to get even more difficult to get to him. So I'm pretty biased towards getting Harry Grant. Marnie, I think, is also going to be probably the next best option in my opinion. But this is something that Josh has mentioned in his podcast, and I completely agree. I think we kind of saw like the best of Reid Marnie last season. He was started so well, and he was really integral to the attack. But whether or not we know that that's repeatable or sustainable, I'm not quite sure. I feel like with Grant, we didn't really see him for much of the season, and he still pumped out a 73.5 average. So I just think we know what we're going to get from Grant. He's playing in one of the best teams in the comp. Anyway, that's a lot of chat, but I'm going to put in Harry Grant in my starting draft team, at least pre-season. Who knows what the rest of the pre-season is going to throw at us. But yeah, I think for me, those are going to be the two hookers. I know there was a lot of talk. Probably could have just said it very easily, but that's kind of my initial thoughts. Damien Cook is someone you could consider, but as I touched on in my hooker video, I just do think he's a bit kind of inconsistent. He's very inconsistent, and his average has been declining in the past few seasons as well. And so I'm a little bit concerned about starting with Damien Cook. Maybe he's one of those guys who, Chris Randall, maybe you can upgrade to Cook and have those two as your kind of combo. But starting with Cook, I'm not quite sure about it. So I'll just quickly look at the chat as well. John, you think your team's pretty solid apart from a good cheapie center wing? I think there's quite a few, not basement dollar cheapies, but there's a few kind of mid-range cheaper options at center wing. So I think we can hopefully help you out with that as well. Keanu, how do you feel about Madison? Because Eels always start strong, in my opinion. I think you're right. I think they do start strong. Madison, I think, is very enticing because he had a bit of a down last season. And so I think he's come in at a decent price. So I think Madison, when we get to the second row forwards, I think is going to be pretty interesting. Isaac Gaming, he'll play 13, Brayley 9. Okay, so I think you're talking about McInnes. So yeah, 13. I don't mind him, to be honest. McInnes is one of those guys, he's just he's super steady. So I don't think you're going to go too wrong with McInnes. Finucane at 10, yeah. Haas, Haas, mate. I feel like me and Josh are just we're on the same wavelength. He's just thinking about the same players that I'm thinking of. So we can go to front row forward after that hooker chat. Let's just work our way down. How about that? Let's just work our way down. We'll go front row forward. So I have put out a video for front row forward as well. If you haven't seen that, do check out the channel. I made it pretty obvious, I think, in that video that Payne Haas is the best front row forward. And one person I didn't get into is I didn't talk about Isaiah Papali'i or Tavita Pangai or Jai Arrow in that front row forward video. Truth be told, I completely forgot, but they're in the second row forward video. So I actually started working on the second row forward video before the front row forward video, and I had them in that one. That's the reason why they weren't in the front row forward video. You obviously could consider Isaiah Papali'i. Again, similar with Marnie, I don't even know if will you repeat that from last season. He was just amazing last season. I think he'll be good, but he's going to be expensive, surely. We'll sort it by price. Surely he's coming at the top. Yeah, 688k. That is a lot of money for IPAP. And yeah, just not sure with the Eels. They've got decent forwards as well. I think he's one of their better forwards, obviously. But yeah, I don't know, IPAP. You can see only 8% own him at the moment. So it's not a really high number. I think it's something I highlighted in my video actually about front row forwards over the past few seasons. The kind of trend of them scoring high has definitely decreased. And so I think you don't want to spend, like personally, I don't know if I'd want to spend that much money in front row forward. I think, and Payne Haas at sub 600k, I think he also had a kind of a down year and he averaged 68. The year before that, I think he was averaging, his base average was like 63. And I can't remember, I read a quote somewhere. Apparently someone asked Payne Haas, and he said, I'm in for my best ever year. I have no idea where that came from, but that's enough of an excuse for me to pick Haas. And you can see, 55% owned. I think he is the top owned front row forward, and I think he's going to be in my team as well. I don't think that's a controversial selection. So Josh, hopefully you're happy with that. So next up, the second front row forward spot, that's going to be an interesting one. So I'm actually just interested by looking at the top ownership percentage as well, because I think it's going to give some clues as to who people think are the kind of best cheapies or just best options in general. Do we still captain Salah every week? Honestly, Turbo is like SuperCoach Salah or Cleary, one of those two. Aman, you need 3 of the top 4 owned. 3 of the top 4. I wonder which one you're excluding. Haas, Stefano, and Tapai. No Tavita. You're not going for Tavita. Look, I know Brew is super keen about Stefano. I think you kind of came around to him as well. I was also coming around to him based on you guys' podcast as well. He actually is one of those people I really regretted selling early last season. I feel like as soon as I sold him, he started going like a mad try scoring run. And 457k, I think if you're starting, I think that's a pretty good price as well. He was pumping out like a 55, 60 plus average towards the back end of the season. So yeah, don't mind Stefano. Tavita is an interesting one as well. If he plays on an edge, I think that's going to be really interesting. I think he's supposed to be playing on the left edge from memory, which I think I would believe should be Burton's side, which I think is going to be better for him to be playing on that left-hand side. So Tavita is also very interesting. He's got the dual flexibility as well, second row forward and front row forward, so that does entice me. It's kind of pricey at 570k as well. Yeah, this guy, Tupai Moroa, hopefully I pronounced that right. I'll be honest, never heard of this guy before. So, but 34% of the game own him, so potentially he's a cheapie that I should be thinking about. I did think that there would be a front row forward Storm prop, potentially. I think there was Jordan Grant, I think was someone that I thought of, but maybe this guy is supposed to be better. So I might just add him as the cheapie, just to go with the crowd. Yeah, let me know in the chat as well if anyone's got any info on this guy. I really don't know him. But I think he could be a good option if he's cheap. 205k, that's a good price. I don't think there's that many front row forward cheapies actually. George Burgess, I know, is coming back to the NRL. And Ethan Bullimore as well, coming over from the Broncos to Manly. I believe that's because, is it Josh Alloway? He's either going to be missing the first game or he's out for some period of time. So that's probably why I'm guessing Bullimore is up there in terms of the ownership percentage. But yeah, I'll stick to that second front row forward spot. I'll be honest, I think it's going to be, for me, either between Stefano, Tavita, or Fanor Blake. So I spoke about quite a few of these guys in my video. So there was Fisher Harris, Papali'i, Fodawaker, Welch, Safidi. They're all fine, but I didn't love any of them particularly. Lindsay Collins, I think, is an interesting one. So I think someone in the chat actually mentioned Collins. Keanu said, should I go for Stefano or Lindsay Collins? So Collins is coming back off an injury. I do believe he should be fit for round 1, but you could say potentially the fact that he's coming off that injury, just not quite sure how he's going to ramp up beginning of the season, could be enough of a question mark. Whereas Stefano, if he's fit and firing for round 1, you could argue he's safer. They're very similarly priced, but potentially that question mark over Collins just means that maybe Collins drops down in cash a little bit, so you might be able to pick him up a bit later. But I do think if he's fit and firing, I do really like Collins as a good mid-range front row forward option. His stats are really good. He's got really, really good base, and I think he's just getting better and better. And I do believe he's going to be one of the Roosters' go-to front row forwards. I think Weira Hargraves is not getting any younger, and so Collins, I think they're definitely going to groom him to be their kind of marquee, I think, front row forward. So yeah, I do like Collins a lot. I think between him and Stefano, maybe Stefano just for the safety, just because he's just not quite sure how Collins is going to come back after that injury. So Collins is definitely high up in my mind, but I'll probably maybe stick with Stefano as a second option. But yeah, Fanor Blake was really interested by 505k. I think for Fanor Blake is a really good price, I think, because we just know that he's got good SuperCoach kind of pedigree. He's a proven gun before. The only issue is that he's had quite a few injuries in the past couple of seasons, so that kind of does also, again, a bit of a question mark as well. I mean, we know he was really good at the back end of the season. I think him going to the Warriors was a really good move for him. Him and Matt Lodge formed a pretty decent front row forward combo. And I think it was due to injuries, but he was playing good minutes at the back end of last season as well. So Fanor Blake is definitely someone I was interested in as well. But again, 500k, maybe do I want to spend that much in front row forward to start off with? Maybe, I don't hate it, but it's a 50k saving on Stefano. I don't know. Hopefully Stefano's not a one-year wonder. Fanor Blake, we kind of know, has a good track record. So yeah, I'm kind of 50-50 on the two of them, I think, in terms of a starting team. I'll put Fanor Blake to start off with, given that he's more expensive. If I need to save money later, maybe I'll drop Fanor Blake to Stefano. But I'll stick with that now. I think that's a pretty nice front row forward starting two, though, Haas and Fanor Blake. Now, in terms of filling in the other two, I'm just going to go with Tupai. So I think someone in the chat mentioned that he used to play for Parramatta a few years ago. So he's okay. So it sounds like he's not a kind of maybe a youngster. He's not a rookie. He's maybe got some NRL experience, which is probably good for the Storm. They're probably more likely to have someone like that maybe than a pure rookie. Also, Nelson and Tui are out. That's why we're all keen. There you go. See, you can clearly see who's done their research, guys. Okay, so he potentially might have a good role at the beginning of the season. In that case, yeah, that completely explains the 34% ownership. Thank you, Josh, again. Oh, Josh, SE Whisperer. I'll use your true handle. Okay, in that case, we'll chuck him in. He can be the front row forward, cashy or cheapy to go for. Yeah, Aaron Penne. So yeah, you mentioned Aaron Penne. Yeah, I was going to get to him as well. So he's moved over to the Warriors now. And I think he moved from the Storm, actually. He was definitely someone I thought about as well. And so him or Bullimore potentially as that kind of fourth or third front row forward. I'll stick with Penne just because I think the Warriors have got a couple of injuries in their forwards. I know Tohu Harris is out, doesn't necessarily play front row forward. So we're going for a double up of Warriors front row forwards, but they've got a good forward pack. So we'll stick with Penne for now. But yeah, he should hopefully get some minutes as well. I think I saw a predicted lineup for round 1 where he was on the bench. Even if he can play some okay minutes, he can deliver some cash rises hopefully. And Shah saying that Collins might be benched to start the season. Okay, yeah, again, I probably should preface all of this with we need to wait for team lists, obviously, in pre-seasons and trials, etc. If he does start on the bench, then obviously I wouldn't start with him to begin the season, and I would definitely stick with like a Stefano if he is starting instead. So I'll stick with the front row forward for now. Now I'm kind of thinking I could just go down to second row forward, but I'm conscious that I've already spent, $2.5 million on my salary, and I haven't got Cleary or Turbo yet. So maybe I should start with them. Yeah, Bullimore I can pick at second row forward too. Yeah, in that case, I'd probably would stick him at second row forward instead of that front row forward if Penne and Tupai are the better cheap options to go for. Yeah, let's go second row forward, but we'll get to halfback after second row forward anyway. So let's see, second row forward. So I haven't done a video about second row forward just yet on the channel. That'll be the next kind of position profile I'll go through. Actually, if you know what, let's on the fly, guys. Let's see if I can actually bring up my stats page for you guys. So early sneak peek to the 2RF video. So bear with me for a second. I will bring that up. No, that's not halfback. There we go. Okay, hopefully you guys see that. So yeah, sneak preview. I wasn't planning on doing this, but here's my sneak preview to this 2RF video that I was producing. I'll just go with the gun analysis to start off with. Sorry. First thing actually what I was going to present was actually the scoring trends for second row forward. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I think second row forward we traditionally kind of think of as that kind of, stack the pack, get a lot of good gun forwards in there because they're pretty consistent. They give you like 60 to 70 points a game. Usually quite consistent, and you can see though the trend in that they're decreasing, and I think this is just with forwards overall in general, especially 2021. It was just really crazy how few kind of forwards were in the top 20 averaging players. So that's what this table is showing for 2021, 2020 and 2019. So it is a good indication of kind of some, if there are names that crop up, we can kind of see that they're historically good second row forward options to go for. So if you look in 2019, you've got Tamalolo. Yeah, I'm not sure, who knows if he's going to be a good option. He was not a good one in 2021. You've got Cam Murray, McInnes when he was playing really well, Madison, Fisher Harris and Ken Bromwich. That's an interesting one as well. And then 2020, you've got McInnes again, Crichton, Madison again, Tamalolo, and then down the bottom you've got Tavita Pangai, Tohu Harris and Isaiah Yeo. So he was listed at centre wing in 2020, but he was actually playing in the second row forward. So there's a couple of names that have come up in almost all three kind of columns. So Crichton has come up in 2019. Has come up in 2021 and 2020. Madison came up in 2020 and 2019. Kind of why I mentioned previously that Madison had kind of had a bit of a dip for 2021. So I'm definitely interested in Madison if he can get back to that kind of 2020 level. In 2020 he was averaging 75. He was such a beast in 2020 for SuperCoach, so definitely am considering him. And so I'll just show the next slide. I won't give away the whole video. I won't talk about it as much as well. But basically this is my kind of analysis of the main guns in the second row forward that I was going to consider. And so you can see I've added in Isaiah Papali'i and Tavita Pangai here as well. And I thought this kind of chart was useful because it helps you kind of see the way that the scoring is distributed for all the players. And so it's pretty evident when you look at this that Fafita was like just a notch above everyone else in second row forward, and it wasn't even because of his base or his work rate. It was just the evasive stats. He was just getting tackle breaks for fun. He was scoring a lot of tries as well, so he's got the highest evasive numbers average wise, and also for scoring, like way more than the next best here on this list is actually Tavita Pangai with 18. So he's 15 points clear of the next best in terms of the evasive stats, and next best in terms of scoring. He's 5 points over Crichton and Brandon Smith. So the numbers were just ridiculous for Fafita. He's so expensive, 745k though. I'm not sure if I can fit him in to begin the season, especially if you're looking to fit in like Cleary or Turbo. That's the problem with starting the season with a 10 mil salary cap. So yeah, I thought this table was quite interesting though, because there's a few players that I thought on here when I was kind of looking at what player I want to start off with. I think base is always the first thing I look at. It just means that your floor is pretty good. You're not going to get stinker scores from them. And so you've got guys like, Crichton, Cam Murray, Frizzell, Madison, Zay Popoli. They've got good base. But you kind of want to combine that, I think, especially as we saw in last season, good, decent upside. So I think Crichton is good for that. He's got the next best in terms of scoring average. Evasive numbers are okay as well, 16. That's only a couple of places behind Fafita. Josh Curran was an interesting one as well. So the base isn't quite as high as someone like Crichton, but he actually had some good glimpses of attacking upside as well. So yeah, Curran is definitely someone that I'm interested in. I think if he gets a starting role, 587k I think is really good value for Curran. And Madison as well, 569k. I just showed you 2020 was averaging 75. There's obviously always a risk with him of head knocks, HIA. But I feel like any player can get concussed, right, in any given game. And then from that point on, that player's considered more of a HIA risk. And so I think it's one of those instances where you just kind of have to hope that he doesn't get any kind of head knock. And if he does, just know that you're probably going to have to just trade him immediately. But we've got 5 extra trades. So Madison, I think I really like to start the season. I think you kind of have to go for some money saving. He's like what? Crichton is 650 and Madison's 570. So that's about 80k difference. I think for 80k difference, I think Madison can kind of get close to Crichton. Crichton is probably going to be the standout though after kind of Fafita, I think. So Crichton, if you can fit him in, I think to start the season is awesome. But I'm personally thinking of 2 guns in second row forward, which would be Curran and Madison. That's just my gut feel at the moment. So I'm going to go back to the actual website and we will put those 2 guys in. So that's my long spiel for that. So Curran, so he's actually not very highly owned either in terms of, probably have to scroll quite a bit down. Oh, that's right. I didn't actually include Josh Schuster on that chart as well. I was going to discuss him in the 5A video. He could be very interesting actually as well. I think he's 500 and, I think it's like 580k. Yeah, or 534k actually. Sorry, it's a lot cheaper than I thought. So I think Curran, I have a good feeling about Curran, so I think I'm going to start with Curran to start the season, at least now. And we'll see after that. So just quickly look at the chat again, so I've been ignoring that. Benny, hit that like button and make those bold trades. Benny, just now that you're here, I've heard that you currently got COVID, so really sorry to hear that. And yeah, hopefully you don't feel too bad. I really appreciate you being here. And guys, if you don't follow Benny on Twitter, I'm at NRL Sponge. He is like hands down the nicest fellow that you could follow on Twitter. He's the one who encouraged me to get Twitter in the first place as well. Absolutely lovely guy. Going through COVID at the moment, so hopefully Benny, you're feeling okay. Hopefully this stream can cheer you up in any way. So yeah, really happy to see you here as well. Yeah, Josh, no worries, you got to run off. Thanks for tuning in as well. Really appreciate the assistance before on some of those players that I didn't quite know about. And Keanu, you had Fafita at the start, best decision ever. Yeah, look, I got lucky with Fafita as well last season. I think I started with him. Sorry, I didn't start with him, but I think I got him after about like 3 rounds. I got him just before he went crazy up in price and on his scoring as well. So yeah, Fafita I got lucky with last season. Surprisingly not super highly owned, so just quickly scrolling here. So let's see, he's 18% owned, so he's only the 10th highest owned second row forward. I think a lot of people probably they're just struggling to fit him in. I think they're probably picking Cleary and Turbo, and then they realize I can't fit in someone like Fafita. So yeah, not surprising that he's not the highest owned. I would think that he would be higher up though. There's quite a few other players in front of him. Although a lot of them are cheap. He's McInnes, again, 31%. He's really, really highly owned. He's in so many so many teams. But yeah, so Curran and Madison, I think, starting off with. And I think I probably would go for a mid-ranger, second row forward as well. Whether or not, I don't think I'd go for 3 guns. I think I'm kind of just trying to balance out the team to start off with. Isaac, Curran's a good shout with Tohu being out for a bit. Exactly. So Tohu Harris is going to be out for quite a while. Hopefully if Curran can lock down an edge spot. He was really good on the edge towards the back end of last season. He actually had some good attacking upside. He's got really good base as well. So I really like Curran as well if he gets good minutes. I remember at the back end of last season, I think he had a couple of rounds where he was scoring like 100 plus. So yeah, Curran, I feel good about Curran to start the season. Hopefully we'll see. I'm sure this team is going to change a bazillion times come the start of the season. So yeah, a third second row forward, ideally a mid-ranger. So Ewan Aiken is interesting as well because I think he is due to start in the back row for the Warriors, but you can get him at centre wing. I think I prefer getting him at centre wing if I can. And so I think I think Aiken is a good shout as well. I really like Aiken, but I think I'm going to get him in centre wing. So when I get to centre wing, I'll probably select him there. And so, yeah, I don't think I'll get him in the second row forward. Dilhan in the chat. Hey, man, thoughts on Watson and Tupanua this year? Thank you. You actually just sparked my memory. So, Tupanua, I think, actually could be the mid-range second row forward that I go for. I remember ignoring him at the start of last season, and my main reason was that he was like, he didn't have good base. He had to rely on the tries, which is true. But we saw last season that the base became less of an issue, and it was more about the upside, right? Tupanua, I think, is a really good price. I think he's around 480k from memory. Yeah, 482k, 10% ownership, so that's not too low, but still a good kind of pod, maybe to start the difference. A good pod to start the season with. So Tupanua I'm actually quite high on because we know that he's going to be locked in, I think, on a second row forward spot, given that Corden is now retired, and so him and Crichton I expect to be the starting back rowers for the Roosters. The Roosters have actually got a pretty decent draw, I think, as well to start the season. So I'll just quickly bring that up here as well. So just scroll down. Yeah, I think the first six rounds for the Roosters are pretty nice. So the Knights in round 1, very good chance I actually go to that game at the SCG. Very good friend of mine, he's a Knights fan. So I did mention to him that when I saw the draw, I saw an SCG round 1. I think we have to definitely go watch that match. Then he's got Manly and then Rabbitohs, which are tougher, obviously. But then it's a really nice run. Cowboys, Broncos, Warriors, Dragons, Bulldogs, Titans. It's not until round 10 when they're versus Eels, so there's a really nice stretch there. Rounds 4 to 10. I think that could be a good time to get Tupanua. Obviously, we can't always kind of book in trades to get players. So Tupanua, I am kind of keen on. I think another player that I've seen a lot of people mention is also, what's his name? Sorry, I'm blanking. What's it? Liam Martin. That's the one. Liam Martin. I'm not quite sure because he was good last season, but I just don't know if it translates to Supercoach. He obviously made it to the Origin squad. Yeah, I just don't know if he's pretty highly owned, 11%. He's actually just above Tupanua. He is a lot cheaper than Tupanua. I just think I prefer Tupanua. That's just my gut. I am a Roosters fan, by the way, if people don't know. So I'm probably going to be a little bit biased towards the Roosters players. But Tupanua, I ignored him last season. I kind of regretted it after he started really good. So Tupanua, I'm pretty keen on. Isaac's mentioning Cotter. Yeah, Ruben Cotter, I think, for the Cowboys is a good shout as well. I think he's going to be really highly owned if I have a scroll up here. Yeah, he's number 13 on that list, 14% ownership. I think, and he's dual listed as well, which is actually useful. I didn't realize that. So hooker / second row forward. So if you've got someone like McInnes, that's going to be really handy flexibility wise. I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, Isaac, if you do know about this. I do believe it's either Cotter or Lukey from the Cowboys, and I think they're competing for a starting spot. So yeah, if that's the case, I think it could be one of the two that could make the draft. So they could potentially be the third second row forward. Mitchell is saying Cotter has got better base. Again, probably need to do some extra analysis into that. If he does have the better base, that might make me lean that way. Is a lot cheaper. It's 100k cheaper than Tupanua as well. So Cotter, I think he's probably going to get in the second row forward. Whether or not he's the third or fourth, don't think it makes a big difference. So it's either going to be him or Lukey. Yeah, I think Cotter. I'll stick with Cotter for now. And you know what? Just because I've been talking about him so much, I'll get Tupanua. Radley. So Isaac, you mentioned Radley. He did end last season decently. he's always got that suspension risk over his head. We know that's how he likes to play, right? Like as a Roosters fan, I know most other teams probably hate him. Obviously, I like how he's fiery and is aggressive, but he sometimes doesn't help himself. So I feel like if you get him into your team, you're gonna have to like book in a potential suspension and trade out. So Radley could be okay. I'm guessing he's also hooker and second row forward listed as well. I'll just quickly check that. No, he's just second row forward. So he's actually lost the dual flexibility. I think that's not going to help him. That was one thing that was good about him last season. He has lost that dual positioning. So I'm not quite sure then if I would go with Radley then. I think I'd prefer Tupunu. I just think he's more locked in for consistent minutes. And I didn't mention Watson before. So Dilhan asked about Watson. I think Watson could be okay. He's probably going to start round 1. I think it's Verrills. I think he's either got a suspension or he's just injured for the round 1 from what I read. But whether or not Watson is going to start, I'm not sure. He could be used again as a bench utility, which he's very good at. Just looking at his price, I think it's about 515. Yeah, 515k for Watson. He is dual listed, second row forward hooker, so it's not bad. But I think when there's some uncertainty about minutes, 515k is a lot of money to pay. So I don't think I'd start with Watson, but he's definitely someone to keep an eye on. And Michael, welcome. He's saying Cotter will play lock. I think that's kind of what I mentioned. I think it's either Lukey or Cotter. Because I believe Tamalolo could potentially play prop, is what I've heard. If that's the case, then yeah, if Cotter is starting a lock, 380k, I probably would run with him. And so, 2 more spots in second row forward. So Isaac Targo is a big cheapie. I think that a lot of people are going to have. I think the reason is because there's a centre wing spot open for the Panthers. So because Momirovski's left and Brett Naden's left. So I think the talk is that Targo is the front runner for that position. So I think he's going to be really highly owned as a cheapie. He is second row forward and centre wing listed though. So I feel like I'm going to want to put him in centre wing instead of the second row. So Targo I'll leave for now. I'll probably put him in at centre wing. Unless I can't fit in any others, then I'll probably just put him in at second row forward. And Pia Kura, yes, that's someone I thought about as well. I think someone in the chat also mentioned. Let me just find it. Apologies, guys. There you go. I'll quickly look at the chat as well. I think I've missed it, so I'll just scroll up a little bit. So Benny, you're doing okay. That's good. I'm glad to hear that you're doing well, mate. I really hope that it doesn't get any worse than that. Mitchell, you managed to pull the draft together with Teddy, Pap, Cleary, Fafita, Haas, Angus, Grant. That is a lot of guns to start the season. Is that what guns and nuffs means? So yeah, so guns and nuffs, it's kind of a tactic that you would use to build your team at the start of the season so if I just quickly kind of illustrate it. So you can see here, you've got all these cheapy guys who are about 175k. Now there's a good chance that a lot of these guys won't play, like at all. So we call them nuffs in the sense that they're not going to play for you at all. They're usually the basement amount in terms of price. And the guns is what you've got basically in your team. You know, your Grant, your Fafita, your Pappenhausen, your Cleary, etc. These are the guns, the top-notch Supercoach players. And so the guns and nuffs tactic is kind of like you fill your team with a lot of the guns, but because obviously you've got a pretty strict budget to start the season, you normally get there by having a lot of the nuffs. I don't necessarily think that's the best way to start this season though, because especially in a kind of season that we think is going to have a lot of COVID impacts, we're going to see like, you know, postponements potentially or injuries, HIAs. I think having good squad depth at the beginning of the season, so limiting the amount of nuffs that you have, is going to be important. It also then helps you build squad value, because these guys are not going to play, so they're not going to gain in price. If you pick cheaper guys who are guys who are slightly more expensive than that, but they play and they make money, that's how you build your team value. So later on in the season, you can actually afford more of the guns. So that's kind of my thoughts, I guess, on that guns and nuffs strategy. So just scrolling. Yeah, Keanu. So you mentioned Brendan Piakura. I think that's how you pronounce his name. So yeah, he's someone I've seen mentioned quite a bit as well. He's only 24% of teams, so I think a lot of people have him. Yeah, he potentially could play in the forwards, I believe, for the Broncos. And so I might actually, a Bullimore I'd mentioned previously in the front row forward as well. You know what, I'll just stick for now. I'll stick these two in as the kind of cheapies for second row forward. I think just put these guys in, hopefully they play. Again, I don't know too much about the two, apologies everyone, but I think again this is one of those instances where like teamless preseason is going to be like kind of important, I think, to keep an eye on. Apologies, I'm just going to have some water. And so we've got in the question as well, another question. Anyone like the idea of running either Cotter, McInnes and hooker with the other in second row for the ability to flex them around? Yeah, that's exactly kind of what I touched on earlier, is that if you've got two players who both have the hooker and second row forward kind of flexibility, that can be really useful. But I just think, yeah, if you don't go with Grant or like a gun hooker, you could go with a Cotter and a Randall and go cheaper in the hooker position. I believe Benny's done something like that where he's gone really heavy in the back. Not so much in the forwards. So if you're trying to save money in your forwards, that could be a good play. I gave some thoughts on McInnes earlier. Basically, I think could be a really fantastic option. We know how good he is, but potentially a risk with him just coming back off such a long-term injury. But I don't mind that tactic of having the pair of them as your kind of one in hooker, one in second row forward. Lukey second row, yep, cool. Connor Watson moving to the Roosters, yep, yay or nay this year. I think it could be good. Whether or not I start the season though, just when there's some potential uncertainty, obviously preseasons might help out with that. I don't think I'd start with him to begin the season, but we know that even in the reduced minutes he can be good. And so yeah, Watson, I don't mind him, just haven't found space for him yet in the current team. Keanu, you got to go. No worries, mate. Thanks for checking in. Absolutely love to see you here as well. And obviously, guys, very happy to see there's 30 people watching as well. And love to see that you guys are posting in the chat as well. Give the stream a like as well if you do like it. And subscribe to the channel as well if you are new around here. It really does help the channel kind of get word out about what we're doing here. So yeah, really appreciate it. I was actually thinking about getting Nuffs for Fafita, but opted out of it. Yeah, I think if you can afford Fafita without impacting the rest of the team, then I think it's a good option. But when you're sacrificing a lot of Nuffs, etc. to get to him, then I think maybe it's not worth it. Dilhan, lock in Bullimore and Lukey, get options to fill your other two slots. Yeah, again, I've got Cotter at the moment instead of Lukey. Dilhan, I could take out Tupanua for Lukey if I need to save money when I build the rest of the team. Maybe that's the way I'll go. I'll just leave it at that for the moment. But yeah, I think let's get to halfbacks. Now, there's one man who stands above all, right? It's Nathan Cleary. 950k, my goodness, he's so expensive. But we know that he is the best halfback, 100% by far. Look at that, 108 average in 2021. The next best was Cherry Evans at 79. That is a 28 point gap in average, which is crazy. So Cleary, the question is whether he's going to be fit for round one, right? If he's not fit for round one, then I think you can make an excuse to go without him, because 950k, close to $1 million, that's a lot of money to be leaving parked on your bench for one round, even if it's just for one round. So yeah, if Cleary's not available for round one, I don't think I'd go there. If he's there though, I think you got to go for him. It's just I think you just got to do it, right? You just got to get him. He's the best. There's lots of other good options, so I haven't gone into a halfback video yet. That's also in the works. I've done most of the prep for that. But basically, it's the same thing I'm going to say. Cleary is the best option. But in terms of alternatives, like Cherry Evans had a really, really good back end of last season. I think his average was over 100 plus for the last few weeks. I got him at the back end of last season, and it was really good for me. Only 3% owned as well, so it's actually really, really low owned. Like, I'm surprised that Hines is higher owned than Cherry Evans. I think Hines could be a risk potentially because I'm not sure if he's goal kicking, because Trindle is a pretty decent goal kicker. Whether or not Trindle actually plays, Trindle himself could be a good kind of mid-range halfback option. And Hines going to a new team that's not as good as a Storm, bit of a question mark as to how good he's going to be as well. And that's a lot of money to pay for him. Kiri, Kiri is definitely someone I'm interested in as well. 5'8" or halfback. 528k I think is a good price. And he should be having a pretty clear runway, I think, to be fit for round one as well. And Jerome Hughes, really consistent option. Kiri is actually really highly owned. I'm surprised to see that he's the second highest owned after Lachlan Ilias from the Rabbitohs. So Ilias is probably going to be, I think, the best kind of halfback cheapie to go for. Just because I think it's either him or Blake Taff who's going to fill in for Reynolds. And the word that I've seen in reports that I've read is that Ilias is going to be the player to play at halfback. And so I think he's definitely going to be probably the cheapie that we go for. Luckily, we can slot him in at both halfback or 5'8". Benny's actually just saying Cleary plays round one. He hates missing games. He'll play. Been training already. He'll be fine. I think. I would agree with that. I think he doesn't like to miss games as well. So yeah, Cleary. Let's put him in. Why are we overthinking it? Oops, wrong button. Let's put him in, and we'll figure it out later in terms of salary cap. So someone else in the chat actually mentioned no love for Tupai. He is in the front row forward. I've got him in the front row forward. So a lot of the guys in the chat did pick me up on that one in terms of adding him, because there's some injuries in the Storm's forwards. So yeah, he's in the front row forward cheapies at the moment. So yeah, we got Cleary. I think instead of going with this, we'll add in Ilias. I think he's a pretty obvious kind of cheapie halfback if he does get Reynolds' spot. So we'll go to 5'8" for now, and we'll play around with budget just in a little bit as well. 5'8" is an interesting one. I do think there's quite a few interesting options. So Kiri, as I kind of touched on, I do like the fact that he is dual listed 5'8", and halfback. I think that can be very flexible with the likes of Ilias. Hastings as well is very popular. 28% own him at 351k. Could be a good budget kind of mid-range halfback option. I think in one season where he played more like almost a full season, I believe his average was around 52 with the Roosters, I think it was. So he could also goal kick for the Tigers as well. So Hastings is an option. Habibi, actually, yeah, sorry, good question. Any love for Toby Sexton? I didn't actually talk about Sexton in the halfback spot. It'll be a case of, I think, if I can't afford Cleary and I have to downgrade, I'll probably will consider Sexton then. It was a very small sample size though for Sexton. I think he only played 4 games. He scored above 60 in 3 of them though, so he did show to be, he's got some good Supercoach potential. He's goal kicking as well. The Titans definitely are a team, I think, that they concede a lot of points, but they can also score a lot of points, which is going to help out someone like him. Actually, I might just quickly see what his price is. I think it's about 434. There you go, 435k, which is a pretty good price, I think. I just think when you got Ilias, you could go cheap with Sexton, but I don't know if I'd want to run him as my kind of like primary halfback. You can get Sean Johnson, 462k for about 30k more expensive, which I think for Johnson, who we know has had some injury problems, but he's back at the Warriors. He's a proven Supercoach gun. I personally might be tempted to pay the extra 30k for Johnson, just because we know a little bit more about him overall. With Sexton, we had a very small sample size, so I think Johnson I probably would prefer over Sexton in that kind of price category. So just quickly look at a couple other questions in the chat. So Dilhan, good idea, mate. Excited for the halves chat. Lots going for Cleary, but your thoughts on Luai instead? Yeah, Luai. We're going to talk about him now in the 5'8". So let me just quickly see his there he is. 516k for Luai. Now I think a lot of people, I don't think a lot of people are going to go for Luai, just because he burnt so many people last season. Because I remember he started the season super well. He started on fire. Everyone got on him. I got on him as well. And I feel like as soon as everyone got him, he just like tanked in average. Actually, I'll quickly pull it up here. We can actually show it, I think. So just points. Yeah. So hopefully you guys can see that as well. I've actually just put up Luai's 2021 stats. This is what I'm talking about. He started the season so well. In the first 4 rounds, he had scored 79, 94, 46, then 128, 79, 81, 65, 57, 81. But around 9, everyone was just like, oh, we have to get Luai. And then, as soon as everyone got him, 23, 41, 21, Origin, 40, 31, 33, 44, 30, 63, 22, and then the last two rounds he did well, 96 and 80, 81. But that middle of the season, I think when everyone jumped on him, it's just gonna they just burnt him. So everyone got burnt by him. So So yeah, Luai, I'm not sure if I'm willing to go back there as well. Burton at centre hurt him. That's a good point. That's a good point. Burton, well, I don't know, because Burton was playing outside of him, right? So you'd think that Luai would just have been able to just pass it to him, and Burton was scoring quite a few tries, but he was ball dominant, so I can kind of see what you mean in that Luai could just defer to him, and that because they knew that Burton could kick as well. So that's not a bad point, Mitchell, and that Burton hurt him. We could see that Luai could do well actually without Burton. Just quickly jump back to him as well, just kind of we're just discussing him at the moment. Let's look at the fixtures, let's see. So we've got Manly, Dragons, Knights, Rabbitohs. So start again. Manly, Dragons, Knights, Rabbitohs, Bulldogs, Broncos, Raiders, Titans, Parramatta, Melbourne. Again, I'm finding a lot of these better teams, they kind of don't have a tough run until round 9. So overall, for the long term, it's not a bad run of games for Luai, I think. But 515k, it's not a bad price either. Yeah, just not sure. Paul Napoli, talk me out of SJ. I don't know if I can talk you out of SJ. I think I've kind of talked myself into SJ as well. I don't know. It's just, again, he's similar to Luai. Everyone got him at the back end of last season because he played the second bye round. And then he just burnt everyone. He was just like, he lost the goal kicking to Trindle. And everyone's just like, well, there goes part of his scoring. But back at the Warriors, it's kind of a feel-good thing as well. So I don't mind going for Johnson as well. Schuster, we should talk about Josh Schuster as well, I think. He was so good last season for Supercoach as well. Very decent average of 61 playing at second row forward. You can pick him up at second row forward as well. I probably would lean to picking him at second row forward instead of 5'8". I think there's enough good 5'8 options. Whereas second row forward, you've got extra slots available. So that's probably my preference. But as you can see, the second row forward, I think there's still some good options there as well. I think for the price, Curran and Madison, I kind of do prefer them over Schuster. But Schuster could be an interesting option. Could see him develop even further. I actually think that one, I think his brother actually watched the old channel. I think it was David Schuster. So David, if you're watching or you watch this on replay, apologies for saying I'm not going to pick your brother or your cousin. I don't know the relationship there. But Schuster, I'm not sure if I'll start the season with him. Munster's interesting he's only 9% owned. I think he's missing round 1, which is probably the reason why there's not too many players, too many coaches actually selecting him to begin the season. I think the popular combo is probably going to be Johnson and Hastings. I feel like a lot of people are going to go with that just to save some money in the 5'8", especially if you're going to be paying a lot for Cleary. So I'm kind of leaning that way as well. I think Hastings and Johnson could be good, steady kind of mid-range options. If I was to pick a gun option, we haven't even talked about Cody Walker. Where is he? Yeah, 5% owned. 735k. Again, that's a lot of money to be paying for Cody Walker. And their draw to start the season as well is not the best, I believe, which is probably why he's not in as many teams. So, I mean, round 1 is great against the Broncos. Coming up against his old halfback as well, and Adam Reynolds. But then you got Melbourne, Roosters, then Penrith. Yeah, I can see why a lot of people aren't starting with Cody Walker to begin the season, just because you know that if he kind of goes below his average in the first 3 rounds, and then Penrith, he's probably going to drop in price. So I think a lot of people are probably going to bank on him dropping in price before they pick him up. So yeah, Cody Walker, obviously we know how good he is. But yeah, that's a lot of money to pay at the beginning of the season. Is there any other options? I mean, Adam Dewey's injured at the moment, which is kind of unfortunate because he was really good last season as well. He's also dual listed centre wing 5'8". But then Dylan Brown. So if any of you guys watched the channel last season, on my old channel, I started with Dylan Brown. My God, he burned me. He had I think he had 2 attacking returns or attacking stats all season. It was ridiculous. I got sucked in by the base. His base is unbelievable. He's got hands down, I think, the best base stats of any 5'8". But we just didn't see any attacking upside. They did shift Moses and Dylan Brown around, which I don't think helped. So maybe another, now, he's got a full season of that and a full preseason. Maybe we'll see him do better. But I think he's one of those players at 466k. I can go for SJ for 4k cheaper. I've just got more confidence picking SJ. I don't know. So I think for 5'8", let's stick with Johnson and Hastings for now. Cleary, I'm quite tempted by it as well. But given that I've got Cleary already, that's a lot of money I'm conscious of. So I think we'll leave it at that. So let's do a quick salary check. I've got 3 million and I need to pick all my centers and all my fullbacks. Yeah, this is probably why getting Turbo and Cleary is going to be really difficult, because just quickly looking at fullback, Turbo is 1.25 million. So if I take away that, I'm going to have 1.7.5 million for, what's that? 8 other spots. What's that? 1.8 million, 1.7 million divided by I don't even know. I don't even want to do the math. But there's not a lot of money left, I think, for other players. So yeah, Turbo. I'll get to fullback after centre wing maybe, but I don't think I'm going to be starting with Turbo, at least in this draft. Let's quick look at the chat. So Kirko, you missed that part. All good, mate. All good. We just covered off Depay a little bit earlier in the live stream. Tom, I had a real life dream that Cody Walker went down to 500k, mate. That's honestly the dream scenarios for super coaches, when those really, really expensive players go down to really cheap price, and you can pick them up later. I remember a couple of seasons ago getting Ponga at 500k, and then he went on to score massively and get up to 680k, or Nico Hines last season. You can get him at 296 eventually, and then he went up to 900 plus k. Yeah, crazy. Mitchell, thoughts on Ezra Mann from the Broncos at 5'8" if he starts? Yeah, that's actually a good point. I didn't actually touch on him. Yeah, potentially he could get a spot with the Broncos. I think if he did get a start, he would definitely be in. Just because if you're getting a playing player at 175k, which is the cheapest price, and he's also got dual flexibility, 5'8" and halfback, I'd probably take out Hastings for Ezra and save 175k. That's a lot of money. 175k means you can go from looking at your second row forward, that can make you go from a Tupanua to an Angus, something like that. You're not far off from going to a Tupanua to Angus. So if I could get him, if he plays 100%, I think he'd be in, because I think if you're getting players to begin the season at 175k, I think you got to go for them. The problem is that we saw that the Broncos were rotating their halves combination quite a bit last season. Hopefully they've kind of Kevy's kind of sorted that out in the preseason. Alright, so centre wings. Let's get to centre wing. I've already seen one person in the chat, Paul Staggs. Yeah, Katoni Staggs. I'm definitely keen on Katoni Staggs. I'll put up his stats actually. So I've got NRL SuperCoach Stats open, so hopefully you guys can see that. Let me know if it's any difficult. But Katoni, you can see 2021 was really impacted by injuries. He only played the 4 games, but 4 games he had a 64 and he had a 90. And was it the Cowboys game? I can't remember what game it was. He had that ridiculous run where he literally just ran through the whole field and God, he fended someone. I can't remember who it was, but my God, he looked good. And if he goal kicks, I think Asako is probably still going to be the goal kicker for the Broncos, I imagine. But Staggs was goal kicking in 2020. If he's goal kicking, what is he, 430k, something like that, I'm definitely tempted by Staggs. Staggs really does tempt me. So you can see, the stats for 2021 didn't really do much, but you can see just up above that, 2020 it averaged 59, and 2021 in those few games it was 62. So Staggs definitely I'm really interested in. Hopefully he can come back from his injury well. And so Staggs is definitely someone I'm very interested in. So just quickly jump back to the main page. 433k I think is a good price for Staggs. Broncos actually don't have the worst draw, I believe, to begin the season. I remember looking at their draw and thinking it was okay. So they have Rabbitohs, Bulldogs, Cowboys, Warriors. So 3 of those first 4 I think are really nice. You do have the Roosters and then the Panthers as well, rounds 5 and 6. So it is a bit of a tougher period there. But then there's Bulldogs and Sharks again. So it's definitely a mixed draw for the Bulldogs, for the Broncos. Sorry, I think it kind of depends on how you view the Broncos this season. I think they're going to improve. They had some good signs towards the back end of last season. So Staggs I'm definitely interested in. I'll probably add in Aitken. So Aitken I kind of touched on in this second row forward option. I think if he is in the back row, he had some really good stats actually at the back end of 2021. And so I'll quickly get him up here as well. I'll quickly get to the chat just after that as well. And guys, if you're enjoying the stream, as always, give it a thumbs up. Really helps the channel out. Sorry for the constant plugs. So I've got Aiken stats here from 2021. Ewan Aiken really does interest me. I do believe he is going to be starting in the back row, especially when Tohu Harrison's out to begin the season. And so you can see here from round 20 onwards is when he started to play in the back row. And his scores there were ridiculous. He did score 4 tries. You can see there 128, 89, 74, 69, 44. And then he only got 12 points, but he only played 13 minutes. So even in the games where he didn't score a try, so round 22 against the Bulldogs, he scored 74, 66 in base. The base in rounds 20, 58, 58, 44, 66, 46, 44 in base, I think is really good if he's playing the full 80 minutes at back row. And if you can get him in centre wing, I think that's just nice to have one of those players who, can be a little bit more consistent, because I think we're going to see something with the centre wings where we're going to have a lot of the cheaper guys and they just tend to be a little bit more volatile. So I think starting off with a guy who's pretty steady, can, that you're going to get some decent scores out of him if he does play in the back row. I quite like the idea of starting with someone like him. So I do think Aiken is probably going to be my starting lineup. There's a lot of expensive centre wings, so I'll just quickly check onto the chat if I missed anything. So Dilhan, if you're liking Tupanua at the second row forward, you might as well go Kiri at 5'8". They both benefit of each other and are a dynamic pairing, playing with Teddy at the back. that's a great point as well. I think going with double ups like that, attacking double ups, can prove to be really, really, really beneficial. How do we miss Adam Reynolds? God, of course. Adam Reynolds would be goal kick for the Broncos, of course. I'm such an idiot. Yes, Adam Reynolds. And yeah, I didn't talk about Adam Reynolds actually in the halfback. He's just been one of those guys. He averages like 50 to 55 to 60 at best. He's just very steady. He's losing. He's got like, who knows how many more extra points he's going to score, even if he's goal kicking. Do we think that the Broncos are going to score as many points as the Rabbitohs? I don't think so. So he's probably going to lose some points in his average. So yeah, A-Ray I'm not too keen on. I think there's better options at halfback. And yeah, thank you for the correction in the chat, guys. He's probably going to be goal kicking, not Stags. But I still think Stags is a good call. Anything else there? Yeah, so what I was mentioning previously about those attacking double ups, yeah, if I like Tuponoa, going for Curie as well, then they can really benefit off each other. Not a bad play as well. I think that's the kind of thing I need to think about more as well as the kind of preseason goes on, is that think about those little nuances a bit more. Right now we're just kind of building just a rough draft, I think, to begin the season. Okay, let's see. How do we miss Adam Reynolds? Yep, touched on. Also curious about Paul Momorowski. Yeah, Momorowski could be a good call as well. I think probably should be playing centre for the Roosters now that the Morris is left. I think there's some talk about Momorowski potentially goal kicking as well. If he goal kicks, I don't mind it. 486k, his stats are fine, average of 56. Yeah, he's definitely in my thoughts. Just not sure whether I'm going to start with him. I think Aiken around that 486k price, I don't mind. And so yeah, I might just make a quick general point around the expenses. The expensive centering options, because we know that they were so good, a lot of them last season. Garrick, To'o, Johnston, not necessarily Mansour, but even like Val Holmes. Yeah, they were just mainly To'o, Garrick, and Johnston. They were just the go-to centre wings last season, and Nico Hines, because Nico Hines obviously was the set centre wing last season. It's so hard to pay this much money for these guys. I don't know. I feel like To'o for 730k, I can get Pappenhausen for cheaper, and I just feel like Pappenhausen is gonna like outscore To'o average wise if he's goal kicking, playing for that Storm side. I know To'o is a beast and he was the best centre wing option last season. It's just a lot of money to go for. I think I'm gonna stick with going with cheaper centre wings, I think, to start the season. I think because there's quite a few decent cash cow options as well, so we can hopefully those guys can help build some squad value as well. And so yeah, I think I'm going to stick with the cheap centre wings for now. But any objections, let me know, because I know that these guys are really good. Garrick, I guess some thoughts about him before. I just think at that starting price as well, he really is reliant on Tom Trbojevic. And I'm just not sure if Tom Trbojevic is going to have as good of a season as he did last season. He can still have an amazing season. Whether or not he has that good of a season, not quite sure. So I think Garrick, the fact that he's so reliant on Tom is not ideal. And Manly's draw actually to begin the season, I don't think is the best. So they've got Panthers and Roosters to start up with, which is not ideal. Then it's a very good run. Bulldogs, Raiders, Knights, Titans, Sharks, and then Rabbitohs in round 8. But then it's Tigers and Broncos. So yeah, I think it might be one of those times where maybe I don't start with them, but maybe have a plan in round 3. Again, maybe use one of those trade boosts. Get an extra trade to potentially fit in, like a Tom Trbojevic or a Garrick. I think that might be the way I play it. So I might not necessarily start with them, just because those first 2 games are a little bit tougher. But yeah, so on the centre wing, yeah, there's a few cheap options. I think a lot of people will probably have a good idea about. One is Suwali. So Suwali should be playing, I think, right wing for the Roosters, and because obviously Brett Morris is retired. So yeah, Suwali, I think if he's starting on the right wing for the Roosters, any wingers, we saw wingers last season actually, that's something I maybe just quickly will touch on. So if you actually look at 2021 averaging centre wing options, most of them are wingers. Garrick's a winger, Toto's a winger, Dewey was out of position, so we won't really consider him. Johnson, winger, Gagai is a centre, Mansour, winger, Holmes was playing like fullback, Rapana was playing on the wing or at fullback, Raymond was a centre, Ikavalu wing. So just looking at those top like 10, 12 players, most of them were wingers. So I think if you are going to go pay a lot of money for your centre wing, I would go with guys like To'o or Garrick or Johnston instead of like a Gagai. just because we found that the wingers were on the end of a lot of tries, and so I think they're probably still the way to go. So yeah, don't mind starting with the expensive wingers, which is a little bit different to traditional kind of Supercoach thinking. But yeah, so Suwali I think would be in. Isaac Targo, I think if he gets a starting center wing spot for the Panthers, I think he's got to be in as well. So yeah, Targo, mentioned him previously, I think we'll get him definitely in one of the center wing spots. Just quickly go back to the chat. Cameron, apologies Cameron, there was a bit of a typo in there, but hopefully it sounds like you found the league join link, which is good. Got to get cheaper if you want gun fullbacks. Kirko, I think I'm gonna agree with you here as well. I think if I want to get in the big boys at the back, probably gonna have to go cheap in the center wing. Toto or David Fafita? Toto better base, Fafita better ceiling. That's an interesting one. I think I'd go with Fafita, just because I feel like there's no one like Fafita at center wing. Sorry, there's no one like Fafita at second row forward. You could argue there's no one like Toto at center wing, but I feel like there's enough decent options. They won't match him, but they may be like better bridges up to Toto. Whereas Fafita, there's something about Fafita. I feel like he's going to be less owned than Toto as well. I would go Fafita. It's a tough call, that one. You could obviously go for either. Maybe my gut's kind of telling me Fafita actually. Cam Williams could almost buy Teddy and Pat for the price of Turbo. Yeah, we'll get into that as well when we get into fullbacks. But yeah, that's one of the biggest arguments I think to not go with Tavojevic. So yeah, center wing. I think we're getting some good discussion actually around center wings. I'm thinking Cobo being mentioned as well for the Broncos. I think if he gets a right wing spot, again as I mentioned, wingers. I do like the wingers. 320k. It's a bit expensive compared to like Suwali and Targo. You could get Coates, I think, for a similar price. So just quickly have a look at Coates here. Coates is a little bit more expensive, about 40k more expensive. Coates is definitely playing in a better team in Storm. But I feel like Storm center wingers, they don't seem to do super well for Supercoach wise. I mean, Addo-Carr's kind of like a decent example where he did very well last season. But whether it's repeatable, I'm not quite sure. And I don't think Coates really has the best base. And I don't necessarily think that's going to change at the Storm. I don't think they're necessarily a team that relies on the wingers to come out of the back that much in comparison to, say, like the Panthers, where Toto just takes like 2 runs a set getting out of his own end. So Coates, I don't think will quite have the base. He obviously will get the attacking stats and the tries. But to start with him, I think if we've got space for him, I'll think about him. But I prefer Stags as well, just for a little bit more money. Or Cobo is cheaper as well if he does get a starting spot as well. And Dilhan, thoughts on picking up Kurt Mann at the centre wing? Has been named to play the 13. Yeah, Kurt Mann is an interesting one because I think with that injury to Brayley, if he does play lock, he was one of those guys who in 2020 was so good for Supercoach. So just quickly bring up Mann here since we're discussing him. So season stats 2020. So you can see 2020, he started at 287 and he got up to 570. He was an amazing cash cow and he was really consistent average wise. He had a 64 average in 2020. That was when he was playing, I think it was 5'8". Someone in the chat can correct me. So yeah, Kurt Mann could be an interesting prospect if he plays a lock. 2021 was a little bit down. I think 2021 here, the average is 43. Yeah, so it was a lot down. But yeah, 2022, 383k. It's not a bad price. If he's playing in the 13, yeah, he could be one to consider. But yeah, I don't know. Didn't give him too much thought. I think I just need to be a bit more open-minded. He is 5'8" and center wing listed as well though, so that flexibility could be useful. So I'll definitely think about him, Dilhan, as well. Kurt still looks small in training camp photos. I think he'll be doing a lot of passing before the line. Interesting observation. I haven't seen those training photos. I mean, look, I'm a tiny guy myself, so I consider all these NRL players bigger than, definitely bigger than me. But yeah, obviously in comparison, he probably is small in comparison to a lot of the other NRL players. Flint, league code doesn't work yet. Apologies, mentioned this a couple of times. It's a typo on my end on that screen, but there should be a auto join link in the description below. as well. So do click that link, and I hopefully should let you join the league straight away without having to even enter the code. And so, guys, I'm conscious that I've been going on for like an hour 20. Wow, the live stream is just going on forever, but I'm having fun. Haven't even finished the team. Just keep rambling. So let's go by ownership. I think this is going to give us good clues to the kind of center wing cheapies. Will Penasini, yep. He probably will get a starting gig at the Eels, and I think Eels have a very nice run to begin the season. So quickly have a look here. Yep, you've got the Titans, Sharks, the Storm, but then it's the Dragons, Titans, Tigers, Knights, Cowboys. So the first 8 rounds, apart from that Melbourne game, really, really nice for the Eels. And I can't remember who it was in the chat that mentioned it, but they do tend to start strong, the Eels, as well. So I think Penasini is probably going to be a pretty obvious selection, I think, to start in centre wing. So just taking a quick look at budget, 1.7 million. Yeah, that turbo money is running out thin, guys. So yeah, if I add in turbo now, I have 500k for 4 spots, which basically means, well, I can't even afford it. I'll have to go like 475k players, and I'd have to take out money from elsewhere. So yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going to be starting with turbo. So other highly owned players, so Tony Staggs, he's really highly owned, 42%. Ewan Aiken is up there. Ben Trbojevic is up there just as a kind of dual flexibility enough. Xavier Coates is in a lot of teams. Talato Amoni, I've heard this name before. I think I've heard that he's a good chance as well, potentially, of a starting gig at the Dragons. Dual listed as well, which is really useful. So Amona is definitely someone I've thought about. I think there was someone from the Tigers as well. I think it was Gildart. I think that's how you pronounce it. Yeah, Oliver Gildart. So he's in quite a few teams as well, 14%. But I can't remember who the Tigers have brought in, but apparently there's someone that could potentially jeopardize Gildart's position at the beginning of the season. So I might not go with him now. But yeah, potentially Gildart could be a cheapy kind of centre wing option to go for. Isaiah Tass, I can see someone's mentioned. Let me see who that's. Mitchell. People are hyping this fella up. Yeah, truth be told, I haven't heard too much about him. I have read the name though, and so he is someone that I have seen and being mentioned before as well. But I think Taylor May as well, someone I thought about, but he potentially could just be, I think, a bench option for the Panthers. So I'm not sure if I'd start with him. So I think what I'll do is, there's a few cheap centers that I can consider. I think I'm going to quickly go to the fullback, because I think it's going to be obvious who we might want to go for, and then from there we'll see what we've got left for the centre wing options. And so we'll sort by average. I mean, is there much more to say than Tom Trbojevic 143, next best Tedesco 86. It's just ridiculous. Like, Turbo killed me last season. I didn't own him early enough, and he just wrecked me. So you could say, let's just get Tom Trbojevic, 514k. Let's autofill the rest. Yeah, whatever. Fill my team. Oh, that didn't work. I thought it was going to autofill everyone. But you can see there, 515k to fit in Tommy. Yeah, it's a lot of money. I think I'd have to sacrifice Cleary. If I did that, then I could potentially get in, maybe, say if I got Luke Keary instead. 936. Even then, I can afford Pappenhausen, but then 241k for 3 spots. It's so hard. It's so hard to fit him. I can't even think about trying to add Cleary as well as Trbojevic. And I think kind of some reasons I mentioned at the very beginning of the stream. If I had to pick between Cleary or Turbo, I'd pick Cleary, just because I think fullback, you've got plenty of other good gun fullback options. Similar for halfback, but Cleary I think is a step above the other halfbacks. I know average-wise Turbo looks like he's a massive step above other fullbacks, but I think there's some context that we can put around a lot of these other fullbacks. Like Tedesco had an injury-affected season. A lot of the Roosters were injured, so they didn't have the best team around them. Latrell, suspensions, Pappenhausen, the HIA issues. Gutherson was a pretty good option last season, pretty steady. I just don't think he's got quite the upside of Tedesco, Pappenhausen. I kind of highlighted earlier, the Roosters have a pretty nice run to begin the season. Pappenhausen, if he's goal kicking, which he should be, and he's fit to go for round 1. Really, really like that combination. Cameron mentioned it earlier as well. You can afford basically Pappenhausen and Tedesco for a little bit more than Trbojevic. I think there's so much better value going with the two of them. I think having Turbo and sacrificing the rest of your team, especially in a season where I think we're going to have good squad depth, I just don't think it's possible. So I've got Pappenhausen. I'm going to go with Tedesco. I don't think there's really any surprise there, to be honest. I think that's going to be the most popular fullback combo. You can see there ownership-wise, Pappenhausen 53%, Tedesco 45%. I think that's the main kind of gun fullback combo that most people are going to go for. I think when we do that, if I bring back in Cleary, just because I know I took him out just for a second there, we've got, again, 316k. So I still don't have enough money to fit in every player, like in terms of cheapies. Definitely going to have to make some downgrades somewhere. It might have to be Cleary that I downgrade. Could be Aiken. I could just have to go for another cheap centre wing option. So I really want to see in the chat what you guys think as well. So even Tupanua, could downgrade Tupanua. What I'll do is I'll downgrade Tupanua. And a couple of we kind of spoke about him before as well. Was Lukey from the Cowboys. So I might just chuck him in there as a bit of a cheapie. So save some money there. So I'm just going to start tinkering around a little bit, guys. I think just so that we can kind of get some different idea of how different squads can be built. You know, can we get Cleary and Turbo? Can we take out Cleary, etc. And then that way we've got 444k to fit in centre wing options. So if I go with some other cheapies, so say if I go with not necessarily Cobo, if I go with enough like Trbojevic or Tass, so someone mentioned Tass, so let's just chuck him in there as well. Now, again, just we're about 100k off fitting in the team here. Grant could be someone we could sacrifice as well. I think someone in the chats just mentioned that as well. Is Grant worth sacrificing for Turbo? I'm really high on Grant. I think it's tough. I think he is by far the best hooker option. So just looking at hooker averages, he had 73.5, which was about 5.5 clearer than Brandon Smith. Brandon Smith's average was super high last season, but he was scoring so many tries. I don't think that's sustainable this season. Reid Marnie, 68. I feel like he had kind of one of his peak years, potentially. Whereas Grant, I feel like we didn't even see the best of him, and he still averaged 73.5. For me, I don't really want to lose Grant, even though he's not playing round 1. I think Randall was good enough as an option to start the season. And Grant, I kind of just want to keep him. I don't really want to sacrifice him personally. I think if I was going to make sacrifices, maybe front row. So maybe take out Fanul Blake for like Stefano. Or maybe downgrade one of the second row forwards. But I've already downgraded in terms of having Curran and Madison. I'm not even going with Crichton. So I'm not necessarily wanting to take money out there. It might have to be the 5'8". Maybe instead of Johnson, maybe I go with Hastings and another cheapie. So maybe like Johnson and... So it's maybe like Hastings and Ezra Mam if he gets named. Yeah. Paul saying Cleary to Kiri. I mean, taking out Cleary is an obvious one. Just because that saves you like, 400k? Just for the moment, Paul, I'm trying to keep Cleary in. Just because I know that I think people will be interested to see a team with at least one of Cleary and Turbo. And if Cleary's named for round 1, I think it's going to be really hard to ignore him. So I don't think I'm going to be taking out Cleary just yet. I'll see if there's other ways that I can afford it. So maybe I'll take out Fanul Blake to start. And I'll go with Stefano just to save some money. So we're going to bring in Stefano. So now we've got 319k for 2 players. So again, it's still a bit tight. I'm getting closer to potentially having to sacrifice Cleary. Let's take out Johnson. Put Hastings in as the first 5'8". And could go cheap with Ezra Mam potentially if he's an option, if he's named. There's just not much to speak of. That's the issue. That's the issue we got here. This is the sacrifice again. This is the kind of sacrifice you're gonna have to do if you want to get in the likes of Cleary or Turbo. You're gonna have to start skimming the edges. We'll put in Ezra just to see if what we can do with that. Now we can definitely afford some options with 606k in center wing. So we can go with Cobo. Nope. 1 second. Now we've got 286k. And so I think with 286k, we could go with the likes of Gildart if he's an option. Just bring him up here. Can't afford Stags, can't afford our boy Stags, but we can get in. Cobbo could save money going from Aitken to Stags. Could even put Aitken at second row forward, but I think second row forward was looking okay. So we'll just put in Gildart for now. I think he potentially could be a option. And that's the team. That's the full 25. 6,300 in the bank, so not a lot to speak of there. So the changes I just made were I took out Fanul Blake for Oichikamanu. I took out Sean Johnson for Ezra Mam, so Hastings would be my number one option there. And we've had to go cheap with Isaiah Tass, so not ideal. There's a couple of players that we're not sure about will start the season. So we'll just save the team now since we've got a full team. But I think this kind of illustrates that unless you've done something that Benny had done, he went really cheap in his forward, so he took out like the likes of Harry Grant. You can maybe afford having expensive backs, but I just think for overall balance, it's really difficult to get both Turbo and Cleary, and I think you can only really go for one. Cleary is like 300k cheaper than Turbo, so I think Cleary is probably the one that I would prefer, just because I know he's cheaper. And so I'd Pappenhausen reserve, I'd swap Hastings, Ezra, put a reserve on Lukey, put a reserve on Cobbo, and then maybe one on Penne, hypothetically. So that's a team potentially that we could run with. I think things that I'd like to ideally change. I'm not happy with the 5'8". I think the 5'8's a little bit weak. Centre wing, I think we could get in like one more better player as well. Overall, I don't mind that team though. We've got, I think, most of the cheapies. Centre wing wise, we've got Targo, Suwali and Penasini, I think are the three best kind of cheapies, and a steady option in terms of Aitken. Amone, you mentioned Dilhan yet. Talato Amon from the Dragons is someone we could throw in there as well. I'll quickly actually just go back to the price screen, so let's potentially just look at the centre wing again. So I think he was quite highly owned from memory. Yep, 29% of players own him, 284k. So he could be a better option than Gildart, and we can afford it. So maybe instead of Gildart, we get Amon, and then we just get it in TAS. So that's one way we could do it. Even less money in the bank now, but we can do that as an option. Atom, yeah, I had to work around no Cleary and Turbo. Yeah, I think without those two, you can do so much with the team. I'm glad though, at least I can put a team together that's okay with one of them, just mainly for captaincy purposes as well. I think it's really important to have at least one of them for captain's purposes. If you didn't have, so say for example you took out Cleary, and someone mentioned it earlier, getting Luke Keary, which I'm not too fussed about. You've now got 423k to play with, so immediately you can bump up your second 5'8" to a gun. So with 598k, we can afford Johnson, Schuster, not quite Cam Munster, but we could get back in Sean Johnson. Still leaves us 136k. So you could then go back to upgrading Stefano to another front row forward. Could maybe even upgrade. Yeah, you could definitely upgrade TAS to like if you want to go with like say a no nuff policy, you want to go for a full playing 25. You could upgrade TAS then. What do we have in the bank? We've got 311. So it gets you a little bit closer to the likes of Xavier Coates in that kind of 300 price category. Yeah, so it just gets you a little bit closer to the likes of those guys. I'm sure if you looked further, you could take out money somewhere else as well. Maybe taking out money in Grant potentially, but I'm not too keen on doing that as well. But I think I'll revert back to the Cleary draft just because it's nice to see Nathan Cleary in your side. So I will stick with him. Oh, that's right. Let's take out Johnson. Get Cleary. Sorry, all over the place, guys. Thanks for bearing with me, and thank you, 35 of you still here. I am at stream's going for an hour and a half. I can't believe I've been streaming for this long. Keanu, talk to you guys later on. Yep, thanks for tuning in, guys. Cameron, I think I'll just buy Grant straight up. I think I'm on the same page as you, mate. Yeah, so I think I'll go back to the Cleary draft just because it looked nice. But yeah, not happy with everything in this team. There is definitely some sacrifices we have to make. We have to start with 275k guys, which I don't think is ideal at all. But if you want to get in the likes of Cleary, that's just what we got to do. But and apologies as well if I'm scrolling too quickly, guys. Hopefully you guys can keep up. But I think it's a decent balance. We've got one gun hooker. I've just tried to make sure we've got at least like kind of one gun, semi-gun in every position. So we've got Grant, we've got Haas, we've got Curran and Madison, we've got Cleary. 5'8" we don't have, which is the issue. Taking out Cleary does let you get to that gun 5'8". There's no gun center wing. Aitken is kind of our kind of mid-range gun. Hopefully you can kind of carry it through. But we've got most of the cheapies, I think. And then we've got 2 gun fullbacks, which I think is really important. I think getting 2 gun fullbacks, and I think Tedesco and Pappenhausen are the 2 best to go for, just because I feel like Roosters are going to be having a good 2022. And Pappenhausen up sub 700k. We saw how good he was before his HIAs. I think he got up to about 900k. Scored 4 tries against the Broncos. Was a fantastic captaincy option as well. Goal kicking for the Storm. I think he's just a really solid option as well. So that's the team that I've come up with at the moment. Just to take a quick look at the chat. So Dilhan Amona at 5'8" or centre wing, nice and cheap. Yep, so he's in the team now as well. I do like the fact that he is dual listed as well, so that's a good pick up there. Paul, nice work. Thanks, mate. Cameron, if Turbo was to get injured early in a match, say his 3rd match, that would be carnage for his price. Again, that's kind of what we have to think about as well. I did show the Manly draw. The first 2 games are tough. And so if Turbo's break even is super, super high, he's going to tank a lot in cash. So you kind of have to bet on the fact that you can pick him up a little bit cheaper. Obviously, the safest thing is to start with him, knowing that you can downgrade Turbo to anyone from his starting price. But I think we're just going to have to make a sacrifice. I think we're already sacrificing in 2 positions to get Cleary. Having Turbo is just going to be even more of a sacrifice. He's 300k more. I'm not even trying to think about doing Cleary and Turbo. I just think it's going to hit the team too hard, in my opinion. And I think Cleary for 300k cheaper probably would stick with him as the kind of, out of those 2 real premium guys to go for. Mitchell, relevant question, Aman, but thoughts on doing FPL live streams in the near future? Yeah, so if any of you guys don't know, on my old channel, it's kind of now an FPL Fantasy Premier League channel, just because I started doing FPL videos on that. They did really well. Mitchell, 100% will be doing live streams, I think, for FPL. So I just invested in a new computer, which is holding up really well. My old laptop was awful, couldn't handle live streams, that's why they were never there. But with this new laptop, we've been streaming for over an hour and a half. I think it's been working fine. And so I think definitely we'll be looking to do FPL live streams, that's for sure. Really excited about that as well. And really excited to do live streams as well during the SuperCoach season as well. So I think I'll leave the team at that. I don't think I'll do any more tinkering. I'm getting conscious that we're going for an hour, 40 minutes. Throat's hurt a little bit as well. I'll just answer a few questions as well. So if you've got any other final question, guys, do pop it in the chat. And obviously give the stream a thumbs up as well if you enjoyed it. Really hope you guys got some value out of it, and hopefully you enjoyed just a little bit of chat around my thoughts overall about the game, players and options that we can consider. Videos are going to be coming out as well afterwards as well, so definitely subscribe to the channel as well if you want to see the more preseason content as well. So Kirko, do you think scoring trends change back to 2020 with the new 6 again rules? This is a good point. I'll quickly discuss that. So the main change with that 6 again rule is that I think in your own half, if you're coming out of your own end and the opposition team concedes like a penalty or like a foul, previously last season, the refs would just blow 6 again. It just meant that when you're coming out of your own end, teams could just be offside and infringe the ruck, but they knew that they just had to kind of concede an extra tackle or 2. It just meant that the teams coming out of their own half got really, really fatigued, and that's what kind of led to these real big blowout scores. Now what the rule is that if you're playing in your own half and the opposition team infringes the ruck or concedes a penalty, you can kick for touch penalty instead of the 6 again rule. That's definitely going to help with the fatigue side of things for basically all the teams. So I do think that's going to have some impact in terms of there might be slightly less fatigue in teams, which might mean we're going to have slightly less blowout scores. I still think though that they're going to be more higher scoring this season compared to old seasons, just because there still is the 6 again rule. But we might not see it as extreme as last season, I think. So it's a great question, Kirko. I think it's definitely something that we're going to have to monitor in the early parts of the season. Habibi, great stream, mate. Cheers. Thanks so much, mate. Thank you for that. Cameron, good stream. Thank you again. Really love that. Dilhan, awesome stream. Def subbing for the 2022 season. Love your work, brother. thank you. Really appreciate it. And Dilhan, really appreciate your input as well in the chat. And everyone who's added questions in as well. First live stream on the channel, hopefully not the last one as well. Will there be like Andy streams, that sort of setup? Mitchell, yeah, probably. So what I'll probably do, what I'm thinking of anyway, is either pre-deadline or post-deadline, I'll just have my FPL team and I'll just tinker with it, talking about my potential transfer moves and things like that. So pretty similar to Andy. Throat's starting to act up as well, guys. So it's probably about time I wrap it up soon. Paul, night buddy. Probably last question as well from Dylan. Is it worth starting McInnes and Aiken? So Aiken, I think there's going to be good value in Aiken. I don't mind going with Aiken. I've got him in the team. And McInnes, he's really highly owned so far. But I think there's going to be some question marks over his role at the start of the season in terms of not necessarily the role, just more of how good he's going to come back from his injury. That's the only thing. And I kind of touched on it before. He's, 530k? Let me just quickly bring him up here. Yeah. At 535k, I feel like if you don't start with him and he does well, he's not going to become like out of reach price-wise. So I feel like you can afford to wait potentially and know that if he does well, you can still afford to pick him up. Compared to a guy who's really expensive or really cheap, you might want to kind of get on that initial price rise. Yeah, McInnes, I think we know how good of a gun option he is. I personally don't think I'm going to start with him, at least currently. That might change if I see some good signs in pre-season. But yeah, for those reasons, I'm not necessarily sure if I'll start with McInnes. Owen, do you not think that there's a chance scoring could also go up again due to more goal line defense? I mean, I don't know necessarily if the change in the 6 again rule means there's going to be more goal line defense in any sense. I'll be keen to see your thoughts on that as well. But I think the fact that there's just still going to be less fatigue in general means that I think teams are going to be just slightly better at goal line defense, and so I think you're not going to see as many kind of blowout scores. That's just my general feeling on it at the moment. But again, it's going to be something that I think we're going to need to see in the early parts of the season. Guys, I think I'm gonna wrap it up there. You might have noticed that my voice is starting to go. We're almost on an hour 45, so streaming has been going on for a long time as well. But again, really want to just say thank you to all for joining. If you in the chat at the moment or you were in the stream previously, and my tech difficulties at the beginning, hopefully next time I'll know not to make those mistakes again. So thank you so much, guys, for joining the stream. On your way out, definitely give the stream a thumbs up. Do subscribe to the channel as well if you want to see more content like this. And if you enjoyed the live stream as well, definitely let me know on my socials. Follow me on Twitter. If you guys like the live streams, definitely will look to do more of them moving forward. But guys, going to end it there. Thanks so much for being here, and everyone, hopefully you enjoy the 2022 season and are super excited that it's opened up again. See you all in the next one.